dye-based inks, like a base coat of color. Okay, now this ink right here, just like yesterday, I was going on one of my stamp sketches and it was blurring a little bit, so I'm going to heat set this. I'm surprised that I do need to do that, but I really re-inked my black pad when I did these stamp sketches because I wanted really crisp impressions and I didn't want to, have to, I don't know, double stamp something, so. Not that any of this is really wet, but what happens is, this is a coated paper, so it leaves a little bit of a residue on there, okay? Dye-based inks work by saturating the surface and staining it, okay? So there is a little bit of this residue, especially if you have like a really juicy pad and a lot of it has penetrated the surface, but on a coated paper, it's designed to retain a lot of that media on the surface, so you get a nice, rich application and visual of that media, as opposed to it all soaking in. Okay. All right. Now remember, we're going to be using these pens here, and these pens are somewhat opaque. They're not exactly opaque. They're a little bit more translucent, but they're kind of approaching opacity, just depending on how much you shake it up. So this is getting darker, even with this lightest color right here. Plus, I have some of that black, kind of residue, kind of being applied on here. As I, go across here, it picked up some of that and it's carrying it over here, so it's looking a little bit darker. But when you're when you have the ability of opacity, you can get dark on this, but then you can go lighter later with the use of this type of media. And I think I'll try some colored pencils on this as well. Okay, now up here in the sky, I think I'm going to go with something like a blue. This is a perfect opportunity for like a quote stamp up here. So I might leave that open like that, but to potentially put a quote in there. Okay, now one of the things that I've always mentioned in my pieces is when you retain some areas of light, like in here and on the road like that, road back there, rooftop, I'm not just coloring this, okay? Like this whole area, say it wouldn't be just green, okay? It'll be various shades of green. So when you do leave lighter areas like that, you're not only coloring, but you're lighting, okay? Now when you think about that in terms of your application experience, you're not doing more to create lighting. You're doing less because you're leaving areas light within your objects and within your spaces, okay? So you just have to put the brakes on. You have to get kind of away from seeing your pieces like outline designs to be filled in certain geometric quadrants, spaces, okay? And seeing it more like a dimensional area. Okay, so if you look at my hand, you can see, different light and shadow in that, okay? So if I was coloring this, you'd color this side right here, but you'd leave, the tops of the fingers a little bit lighter, okay? So it's not just an outline, a two-dimensional type of thing. It is, when we're doing two-dimensional pieces like that, but you're thinking about it more in terms of a three-dimensional piece. And all that means in terms of application, you can do whatever, as long as you just retain some of your lighter areas like that. You don't have to think about, you can think somewhat like, okay, let's see, if the cabin's there, would the shadow be there? Is that lighter? Is that darker? You know what I mean? You can think about that. Like right here underneath the trees, I'm kind of darkening it a little bit because, trees create shadow. I do that at the base of objects like this. So this is a really light green, but the very fact that I'm applying it on there, it makes it darker. But see, just as long as you oscillate your lights and darks, you're creating lighting, okay? I mean, there could be clouds up in the sky, so it's not like I'm going to go like this and go, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have made that. That doesn't make sense to be darker there. It doesn't matter. It's just as long as you oscillate things. Oscillate, we call it checkerboarding in one of my art classes. It's when you kind of go, it's light, dark, something like that. And if you're going across this way, here's dark, light, I don't know, dark. Okay, something like that. Oscillate things, and then it makes for a richer viewing experience by having the variation, okay? It's not just kind of a monotonous tone, all right? So just you can look at it like that too, and it makes it easier, think about kind of this checkerboarded surface in terms of values, okay? Now I'm adding this green into here. This is the peeled paint distress ink, okay? Now see this, I left this kind of road a little bit just, what is that, the antique linen, okay? See, here's my applicator right here. Let's go to another color. There's your brand new applicator, right? Okay, let's go to some walnut stain. Okay, now when you get into your darker tones, just kind of stay in those, areas that you applied your darker tones, okay? Areas where you've kind of retained light, maybe don't go into those ones with your darkest colors, okay? Now, I mean, you could do a very light application of this, like this. That's barely discernible. So, you know what I mean? I mean, you could go into there, but maybe don't go into it with, an absolute full saturation, okay? And don't worry about getting things too smooth with this, too, especially if you're doing it kind of in the manner that I'm going to be doing it, which is multimedia, I can smooth things out with colored pencils and these, well, I don't know about the paint pens, the colored pencils for sure. Okay, but see this right here? I'm going into my grass with the brown, with the walnut stain. Okay, I don't really want it up in the nice sky, so I'll kind of avoid that. Now see, I'm coming into my cabin here. I mean, this is not a detailed, applicator here at all. I used to like using my color box stylus tools a lot doing this type of work. And those were the best, but second best I find as far as an applicator goes is just this paper towel. You saw how you can just kind of bend it and you can mold it like this. I don't know if you've ever heard of those stomps in art. It's like a paper little stick that you can kind of peel. It has a little point on it. It's really for things like graphite and charcoals and things like that to apply dry media, to a surface. This is kind of like a moldable stomp. And it's almost like finger painting, okay? But do you see that lighting in there? And you can imagine if this road was all that same color or value of brown, you wouldn't really even be able to see it. It would blend right in with the surroundings, Yeah, I might want a little bit of this on there. But for the most part, it's light, so I've created this kind of a visual entryway into the scene. You feel like going down kind of a illuminated road. It makes it very inviting, okay? It's like we're following the, I don't know, not yellow brick road, but the illuminated road, you might say. Okay, now I'm going to go into this with a very light blue up here. Okay, let's try the Memento Summer Sky. Someone asked me about a cotton ball. I don't know, I usually don't see the cotton balls for something like a dye-based ink. Let's try it, though. Now, if you're going to do this, I just don't think this is going to work at all with a synthetic cotton ball, or ball. I guess it's not cotton. Cotton-like ball. I don't know, what do they call those things? Yeah, that works okay, but it's just, see, it just doesn't apply enough ink. It's barely, now this is a really light pad color ink. etc. So maybe if you're using a darker one, that would be okay. Okay, I need a new paper towel. Or do I? Let me see if I can find enough area on here. Voila. Look at that. And these are disposable. And this is not a full piece of, paper towel. It's a very small piece. So you can get a lot of applications out of one paper towel here. Okay, I'm going to be careful not to go into those trees here because this is a very light tone and this whole area up in the sky is going to be fairly light. Now if you don't want to smear something too, what you do is you just use more of a dabbing motion so that you're not dragging across imagery, okay? Now what you do is you concentrate more color like that and then you transition it. See, I'm getting my transitions with the use of a swipe going from wet to dry over here, but if you're doing this over here, then you're concentrating it more with more taps and then transitioning it this way. So by the time you get, a few taps in here, it's getting drier on here, and thus each tap becomes lighter. Or you can do that down here too. I'll go into some of these trees over here. And here's my little trick here, and what I recommend in my videos is that when you're doing different colors in different areas like that, what you do is you take some of this color and you bring it down into your grassy area, okay? You can't really see it very well. There might be some kind of like hue change, but like down here on the road, a little bit of that blue down in the road, and it just kind of brings some of that blue lighting into the terrain. I can put some on my rooftop here and do it in the lightest colors. You don't want to do this in a navy blue or something like that, but you're just your lightest color like that, and it just creates this nice continuity. I don't know if you can see that little gist of blue here, here, and here. It's not a full saturation of that color down here. It's just a few little taps, but see, this is white up here, but this is the blue down here. Do you see that little tiny tinge of it? So when you look at this in the overall, we have this area relating to this area down here that's kind of this high noon, blue colored sky, but we have that little bit of tinge of blue in these areas right in here. Now, even if you don't see it so distinctly, let's say I put it right over the top of this brown, it is influencing that brown road, just a touch, okay? And I just think that'll, it brings that, it's like a needle and thread type of thing, albeit a very, very, very subtle one into the scene. And when you do those types of things, when you do repeated, connected colors, values, textures, things like that, it doesn't matter what it is. We create visual harmony that way. Okay, all right, so let's see. I think that's enough coloring. Let's play around with some colored pencils now. Now, I do this in layering. Okay, I'm not going to put down colored pencil and then try to go onto it with dye-based inks. The dye-based inks just won't, they're not going to stick to wax. Okay, so here's a few different values of green. Okay. And this really light green right here isn't going to read very well over the darker areas. Okay. It's not going to be that opaque, but see, this light green is kind of adding a little bit of a brightness. I'm going to try to retain my lighter area in that zone though, okay? But this light green right here might give a little bit of kind of a richness into the darker areas though, where it's not just, I don't know, kind of a, I don't know, it wasn't monochromatic, but, or mono value, but, I didn't use a ton of greens in there. In fact, what was it? It was just the one. It was just the one distress green. So this is a way to go back into it. Okay, now here's the thing. This is what's perfect about colored pencils. On this stamp right here, can you see where we go from, okay, this is how I'm doing it. Light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. I know, dark, light. But you see these darker areas right in here? Okay, this is what you follow with your media. Okay, so in these darker areas here, I'll show you. Now this is a light green here, but I'm adding some of this light green into these shadow areas, okay? You can go over and you can go into your road as well. Okay, like that. Now I'm just adding a light touch with it. See, at the base of the cabin has a shadow at the base of it. So I'm adding some more shadow down there, okay? Now go very lightly because you want to blend that into your dye-based ink applications, okay? Now here's a darker green, okay? But don't go with this green. Go with this green, you know, really light like that. And hit it in those shadow areas. You see that right there? Where that hill's becoming more three-dimensional that way by having this kind of darker base, like that. And then as I transition up, I go like this. I go a little bit darker, and then I go lighter like that. Okay? So a little bit darker in the darkest of areas. So, you know, I'm just looking at the designs for my, you're taking your cue, at the base of the trees. There's shadows down here. So see that right there? If you get textures from your colored pencils, all the better. Texture is not an enemy in the visual arts. Texture is really kind of a formidable ally of yours in terms of a textural range. You can have some really super smooth areas, but have a little texture in there because if you like smoothness, having additional texture in some areas will make the smooth areas seem much smoother by contrast. Okay, here's an even darker green. This is starting to look just pretty good as is. I'm beginning to wonder if I want these pens in there. We can always change up. These ones right here kind of give it a much more kind of impressionistic look. But this is looking, I don't know. I haven't used multimedia like the colored pencils, and this is brown right here. Now see in this cabin right here, I'm going to not color in like the entire cabin. See, I'm kind of putting these streaks in there like that to give variation to some of those planks. The wood, it just ages differently. So, and see, this is a kind of a darker brown, so I'm going underneath the eaves here. Now, on the top, I didn't, there's not a lot of color, so I'm just adding that kind of here and there to give variation to the rooftop, too. Okay, now we used brown down here, the antique linen and walnut stain, was it? Yeah. Distressing. So here, I'm just going into my road with some additional brown. I'm kind of reiterating it. Now, see, I mean, you can go, one of the things that's really great about colored pencils, there's these little rocks down here, and if you want to go and, you can add in these little shadows in brown at the base of some of these rocks. I mean, that's like a really tight little detail type of thing to do. But, it takes you, how long is this going to take? 15 seconds to add all the shadows in for these little rocks down here? I mean, not all of them, but a few of them. Okay. We'll add some of this brown. Remember taking some of the blue into the grass. We'll take some of the brown into the grass as well. And that brings those areas together. Okay. What do you think about that fence? That fence is kind of giving a pretty strong visual lead-in. It's really working pretty well. Okay, so yeah, I think we're going to. I'll use these in the next one. I just don't think we need it here. Okay, so this is black. All the images are stamped in black. I'm going to use kind of my black as a, I don't know, like a 5% gray. Okay, at first. So when I'm doing this, I can't really see anything, okay? It's only through repeated kind of little sketches like this. See, it gets darker and darker the more that you lay down, okay? So don't go like this and say, oh my gosh, I can't see it, and then go like that, okay? Just kind of readjust it, or use just multiple impressions, multiple swipes of your media to get darker. So here, see, like right here on the Ven's pose, I'm kind of adding a little bit of shadow down there, maybe anchoring it down into the surface a little bit more, because a fence would kind of cast a little bit of a shadow like this. Now this is really subtle. I'm not adding real long shadows. It's not like the light is on the horizon. It's casting these super long shadows or something like that. But I just kind of do a little bit at the base like this to anchor it in. I'll put a little bit of this right on the edge of my road. Okay, maybe that's a little bit too dark, but oh well. Underneath my trees, at the base of the cabin, like this, under the eaves. Maybe that tree is casting a shadow on top of the rooftop right here, so, you can add a little bit of like a 5% gray. Look at this. See that shadow on the top of the rooftop like that? So see what I mean? It's coloring, but it's, instead of just doing the whole thing brown, okay, that whole rooftop, doesn't that cabin look a little bit more three-dimensional, having one side dark, a little bit of light on the top of the roof, maybe varied. Now I've added a shadow on the top of the roof, okay? Underneath these eaves right here, we can kind of strengthen the shadow a touch. See these trees over here? I'll add a little bit of shadow down at the base of those, okay? But it's just like something like this. It's not a big commitment to, this hue here or the shade, just black. You're just doing a little bit of that. Now look at how that anchored that in there like that. See this right here? Here's what you can do too. You can kind of come out this way like that. Here's a tree right here. See how that works? Don't those images have more of a visual weight? Do you see it right here? Like that? And like that. There. Watch this right here. And do you see underneath here, 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 and here? See that? Don't things feel like they have, kind of mass to them now? Instead, they weren't looking like they were floating around or something like that, but I don't know, everything just seems a little bit more anchored in, and I don't know, we've given like visual weight and opacity, really. You're saying that there's lighting in here, and the objects are affecting, the light. It's, they're casting a shadow like that. All right, so anyway, that is that. All right, well, let's have some fun there. Okay, I might not go with the 2mm pens. That might be a little bit too much. But let's go into some smaller applications. My desk is piled with stamps right now. Okay, the Artistro. When did I use this purple? The Artistro 0.7mm. Okay, let's bring some of these out. Let's put in some. Let's bring some violet into the mix. Or the white. I think that's white. And, okay, let's start this all over again in terms of the shaking up. These ones are clear, so you can see that. Do you see that? These ones I do store on their side, so you can see the clear, delineation between water and pigment like that. Okay, this one, you can see that right there. I don't know, these things look like ice cream to me. That's what I think about when I see these things. Can you hear that clicking? That's, you got to really engage that shaker ball. I shake it up like this with the tip up, and then you go tip down like that. All right. Yeah. You really have to shake these things up quite a bit before you use them each time. But it's a small price to pay for these types of pens not clogging on you. Okay, I don't have any clogging problems with these new acrylic styles of paint pens, and I'm guessing it's the same for all of the different brands out there. They look the same to me, so I'm just guessing that this type of thing comes out of one factory. Okay, I'm going to kind of attempt to bring in some illumination, okay? So what I'm usually doing is I'm usually adding these little speckles kind of right around in the area where they can show. So if I'm putting them into a light area, you can't see them at all. It's the same value. And then I kind of go up into the darker area where this light color is going to stand out, okay? So I started in the... Now, I don't know what this represents. It could represent, just some kind of colored light reflecting within the piece. It could be, I don't know, I can't think of like a green flower like this that would be growing in a meadow. It just, I don't know, it's kind of an extension on lighting in a way. And it first brings a nice little kind of sparkle into an otherwise, maybe less than interesting area, okay? So see this right in here? It kind of creates that shimmer on the grass. It's like dew or something like that reflecting some light. Now I'm doing it in green. Now we're going to get into some white, but I usually start, if I'm going with multiple colors in this type of application here, I usually start off with my colored ones and I kind of finish up in the white because the white just stands out so much more. So I kind of work up to that, okay? Sometimes before these paint pens came out and before I got a set, which wasn't too long ago, I would just do it all in, white. But in something like this, okay, now here's kind of a muted pale green here. It's a little bit darker than the other one. Adding this in like so. Hopefully you can see that a little bit. Down in here. I don't know what that was. 10 seconds worth? You know what I mean? You don't have to add a ton of it. You could. But, I don't know, sometimes subtle little marks. Okay, this is kind of a similar color to the antique linen in a way, right? See, that's what the beauty of these... I find these sets to be pretty reasonable. I mean, I used to pay, I don't know, what did we used to pay for a really good, like, gel pen? Was it like $2.50, $3 a pen or something? These are like $1 each, I think. I mean, this one right here, the Meows in white, is, I don't know, yeah, I think there was a box of 8 for $8 or something? I don't know. Okay, so here I'm adding this, right down into my road. It's kind of creating a little bit of a little sparkle on the road. I mean, it's not supposed to be sparkle. It's just supposed to be like little things capturing the light. And if you look at this right here, do you see all this little white highlights? Okay, on a pad or something like that. Do you see this highlight right here? It's all around us. It's on your fingernails, okay? Those little highlights and whatnot. reflecting light. That's what you're doing in this, your worlds like this. It's you're kind of doing what is all around us, but we don't necessarily think about here's a wooden stamp like this, and there's these highlights like that. If I'm outdoors or something like that, that you're reflecting that light in there. So adding this type of thing in there, it's not like fantasy or something like that. It's kind of more kind of reflective of what is around us. Okay, now I'm going with a complete hue change right here. I think this looks like, I don't know, lupin. Is it lupin or lupine? I never knew. But it's like little wildflowers. Something like this. And I happen to think that I kind of cluster it a little bit too, rather than just going like every, quarter inch apart or something like that. Now this is kind of subtle because in a lot of the areas where I'm adding these little purple violet dots, it is the same value as them, or it could be a lighter value or a darker value than them. They stand out more when I'm doing it over a darker value. So let's take a look at this overall. All right, so you see it down there and here. I mean, you can put some on the road too if you want to, but see that little purple back in there? There's little traces of it. And then when you look at it like this, I mean, it just kind of harmonizes in with the surrounding. It tends to bring these areas really to life too, okay? Adding it down my road. I think I had some on top of my rooftop too. You can even color in the windows, to make it look like, there's interior lighting. But this isn't really a, nighttime or type of scene, but you see those white little specks everywhere. This is the one that, you tend to kind of go overboard a little bit with sometime, but if I ever do that, all I do is I just fog over certain areas, which I do anyway. Okay, so those are the colors right there. So this kind of make a nice color harmony too. I always recommend to people that they take out their pads and their media that they're going to be working with to look at it visually to see if it kind of creates a nice, color harmony rather than taking out like one pad or pen at a time. When you do something like that, then you can see the range of values too. All right, now this is the 2mm one that we'll use in a future piece. I don't know. We could go with a couple little. Let me try a couple of little dots of this one. This green here. I'm kind of adding it in areas where it'll be a little bit more subtle. I'm adding it into these areas where it's not very much of a different value than the background, so it just kind of blends in a little bit. You can't even really see it, right? But then when you look at it, it's like, pointillism or something like that. You can see it right in here, background. But when you look at it at arm's distance, you really can't tell. But you see the lighting in here still? Light, dark, light, and this whole area. The darkness is kind of defined by the fence and the shadow underneath that, but light, dark. And same thing, it's like light, darker, light, darker. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not, everything isn't all divided up equally. Just as long as it's art, it could be a really small area of light and, moving up into a, much darker area, in terms of scale. Okay, so here is my white pigment ink. This kind of mellows things out a little bit. Sometimes I get a little bit too crazy with the dots. So, I like this as kind of atmosphere, all right? Now, if I was stamping this from scratch and I know I was going to do this, I probably would have colored those trees green and stamped them out. The cabin black and the trees would have variations of green. But let's go ahead and put a little bit of pigment ink over it like that. Do you see that? It puts it into a little bit of fog or haze like that. And it kind of gives it that nice atmosphere. Now see that right there? See how easy that was to do? I don't add it everywhere. I kind of oscillate it. Okay, so see this fence right here? I'm putting a little bit in the lighter area. What you do is you kind of put it in the lighter area, and then you kind of creep it into the darker area surrounding it. So there's that little bit of light like that. Don't you feel that it changes kind of the spirit of the piece by having this kind of textural contrast in here now? Now suddenly you have something, an element that is very soft looking in here now, like those trees and this area right here. Doesn't it make it look like that fence? Doesn't it further kind of push forward the idea of that fence being more distant than this area right here? It's because you could have had it, soft over here and sharp over there too. But just as long as you're kind of varying it a little bit. Now see these trees right here in the distance? Let's make them look even more distant, okay? And you didn't have to, the thing about that is you can decide at this point in time, you don't have to decide right when you first stamp out your scene. You could get down to the last thing and think, oh, okay, instead of that tree being black, let's make it a varied gray or something like that. So you can still do that type of thing with this type of effect, but look at that little area back there. See this tree on the horizon, these little ones like that? Ooh, that's really a ton of white pigment ink like that, but it dries darker than what it looks like when you freshly apply, or if you just apply too much, just go in and wipe it off a little bit like that. You've got plenty of time before it, sets up completely. Okay, so adding these back here like so. All right. So now, don't we have kind of a little bit of a deeper space in here, visual space type of look? And let's see if we can find a nice little quote for that up there. Let me see, let me look into my scenic sentiments. All right, I have found a quote. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. I figured we have this strong visual lead-in. We have the road, and those two coupled together, I figured, that was a good one. It kind of stood out to me. I don't remember the last time I've used it either, but it's really great for like roads and paths and whatnot, or anytime you use like hikers, something walking off into the distance. I guess it'd be kind of interesting. You can even do it with an animal that tends to migrate, caribou or something like that. Okay, so let me just have this. Let me get my bearings. Okay, I just want to make sure that I have that fairly straight. This is where a positioner would definitely come in handy. But I don't do that yet. I do like the look of them when I see people using them, though. Okay, I'm just talking about in terms of the angle. Not too bad, though. Okay, we're just eyeballing it. All right. So that looks a little bit darker too. It's going to kind of mellow out. Now, one of the things you can do too is you can let that dry, and then you can put a little bit of pigment ink, so it looks like the words themselves are in kind of a veil of illuminated mist or something like that. Okay, now it's been like a few minutes since I stamped this out or finished it. I think I could use a little bit more color impact in here. Okay, we stamped that really pale violet in terms of like a lupin or something like that in there. Let's try a couple of things of pink in there. Pink and green, they go really well together. I don't think they're the complements of each other in terms of the color wheel, but let's just add a few in here. I'll kind of cluster them in with violet, you know, where the violet is. I'll even put a couple on the road here, you know, that brown and pink color. So I don't know what it could be. It could maybe there's, you know, there was a breeze and I don't know, some, you know, little blossoms went down there or something. Okay, but let's take a look. I don't see if, I don't know if you can see those, but yeah, a little bit. See those little pink little flourishes in here? And you can see it on the road, back in the distance like that. Okay, so you get that little bit of a, you know, color continuity. It's a textural continuity too because you have the pink little dots in here. I mean, when you look at it like this, you know, you really can't see it, but the closer you get, it's one of those things you reward your viewer for further inspection, closer inspection. You know, if someone gets your card, they might think, "Oh, this is really nice." And what they're doing is they're looking at it like they would a poster or something like that. They're getting the overall kind of feeling of it. But then like an interior spread of a book, you know, where, you know, they're looking at something kind of closer up, they can really kind of appreciate, you know, the little time that you put into, you know, those little touches. Let's put some of that, you know, right in the front, in the darker area, right around these fence posts. Yeah, see that right down there at the base of that? It's a little splash of color, right? But what is it also? It's a little touch, even if it's three dots right there. It's a little touch of light too, because this pink is lighter than the background. Now, if you put the pink on white, the pink is darker, okay? But this is little touches of light, because what you're saying is that, you know, light's reflecting off a little pink flower in that area. So it's kind of, it's all about, you know, it kind of creates illumination down there as well. And see that right there at the base of it? Okay, so I think that is it for our second finishing off of one of the stamp sketches, preliminary stamp sketches from the stamp sketch video for nature set number 26, Fences. And that turned out, I don't know, really nice. I'm getting the feel for colored pencils, and I'm really enjoying them. When I look at this piece, though, I can't really tell that I use colored pencil down there, to tell you the truth. Now, a real colored pencil piece, you can see the pencil marks and everything like that, and I think that makes it a much more effective use of the pencils, but I'm kind of using it just as like light shading tools and whatnot in here. And then, I don't know, it changed in spirit from my initial concept to the final result. You know, from this, we'll use these ones like this with the real autumny type of look. How's that? You know, we play around with that in there. And we'll try to make kind of a much more kind of impressionistic type of feel. This has, you know, a little bit of impressionistic types of touches in here with all that little paint pen, you know, the smaller paint pen, but I don't know, I think it came out pretty nice. All right, so anyways, thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks as always for tuning into the Stampscapes channel.